now I would like to open discussion. Who wants to ask?
Hello, my name is Radovan Jurana, Institute of Economic and Social Studies. I'd like to ask you, could you tell us some more details on pension reform which took place in socialistic model?
Yes, I could. If you think about the Swedish pensions reform, I can tell you about that. We had a very, centrally planned socialist pension system before, which was, it couldn't bear the fact that we had a demographic change. We had, in 1913, the mandatory retirement age of 67 was introduced. And then the average life expectancy was 59. And in 1980, the life expectancy had increased from 59 to 80, which means that more and more people were in the retirement systems, and it was enormous and very costly. So there had to be a reform, and the reform was, I think, in the right direction. I think we could have done much, much more, but it was a political compromise, and it was basically they cut the public pension levels by, on average, 40%. 40% lower state pensions. And then you have a fairly low state pension, and then above that you have a private pension which you deal with your employer. And above that, in the third step, you might have a personal private insurance in pensions. And also you get a small part of the state pension is free for you to invest in any way you like in Chile. And that's the main features of the reform, and it has, I think, was a good direction. We could have went more far in the direction of private pensions, but it was quite far. And we also have a very flexible pension age, retirement age. Now you can work until you're 70, 75, if you like, and you get higher pensions if you retire later. Thereby they have diffused a lot of the demographic bomb, as it's called. And you also have much freedom of choice. All over the streets of Stockholm you have advertisements from private insurance companies now saying, have your pension here, have your pension here, live in Thailand when you're old, with our pension system here, blah, blah, blah. So you do have exactly what I want. You have the competition and freedom of choice, and you can see that this is so much better than the state pension that we had before.
Thank you. My name is Kristina. I'm more or less freelance, retired. So, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It's quite interesting. Anyway, I would appreciate if you could identify difference between social democratic approach to social model, European social model, and let's say conservative approach to this issue. It's one point. And some discussion to your presentation. Let's say Finland. Why is Finland, according to my opinion, very successful? Certainly what you said, but first of all, I think that in last period, Finland is on top in innovation rate in the Europe. Very high investment in research, innovation, science, universities, and so on. It's clear. And to Norway, I remember very often speaking with old Swedish people, let's say 20, 30 years ago. They remembered, oh, Norway is a very poor country, and so on. You know very good history, Sweden, Norway. But just now, really, it's very rich, because it's very rich, as you said, oil, gas, also granite, wood, fish, whales, large territory, and so on. It's really very, very, very rich country. To Denmark, my point is that Denmark is very successful, especially because because of a very good, flexible training system. Training system, flexible and linked with very flexible labor market. Of course, this taxation is in all Nordic countries a problem, an issue. First point for discussion is in England, whether or here football and so on, but taxation is a very often topic of discussion. And also I would like to say that Denmark is a very good public administration. Now you started with something how to make good reform and be re-elected. It's a problem. Just to say something that's really previous government was re-elected, but not in the same composition here in Slovakia. So really the big reforms took place, especially in this legislative period, 2002-2006. And now, my question was set up at the beginning of my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you for a very interesting question again. I would just say that the first about the social democrat and the conservative approach to the social model in Europe, I think, I think partly you have to look country by country because it's a bit different in every country. Because you do have quite reformist social democrats in Britain, but the social democrats in Sweden are very anti-reform. So there are differences within the parties between countries. But I think also that there are many conservative parties in Europe that tend to accept the big state, tend to accept the social model, just with a few minor changes. And I think, they try to use the big government to promote their values instead of the socialist values, but still it's the same big state. And I think the free market reforms in Western Europe have not really been there for quite a time in the big countries. The socialists and the conservatives have both accepted to do no reforms, except in Ireland and the Netherlands and some countries. But I would like to mention first, which I did not remember, but if you want this book, I only brought one copy. You can email info@timbro.se or email me, and I will see to it that you have it. Second, I'd like to mention, you said that Finland is very innovative and has a reason for the success. I would like to mention one thing, because in these so-called indexes from the World Economic Forum, etc., the Nordic countries are always very high. You know, they're number 2, 3, and 4, and it's said that both by the politicians in Nordic countries, we're almost as competitive as the United States. Well, you have to look at what are these indexes exactly evaluating. Well, they're looking at innovation capacity, they're looking at technology use, they're looking at how well functioning are the institutions, they're looking at how good are the management skills in the companies, etc., etc. And all of that is very good in many of the Nordic countries, I admit that. But to the extent that they look at the political sphere, what the politicians decide in terms of taxes and regulations and labor market, the Nordic countries score very badly. But they only look to that in a very small extent, and they look to all other things. And that is why they end up very high. If they only had looked at what the politicians decide, the Nordic countries would end up among the last. And at last, I will also mention, you said that how to reform and get re-elected. My first question. I think it's a matter of reform strategy, which I said here. I think that when you're elected, you have 4 years. You have to do a few reforms by the beginning, very quickly, that you know are likely to have very positive results 2 years' time. And then you can say to people in good time before the election, look, the reforms worked. And then you will have a better chance of getting re-elected. I know this is highly simplified, but that's when I look at many reformist countries, I can see that that is what they've been doing. They were quick about doing reforms. They awaited the results. They were very clear in the communication. and they were very, very convinced that this is the direction to go, and that's how they have been re-elected. But you can also look at Britain. Margaret Thatcher was asked, what's your greatest achievement? And she said, well, I think it's Tony Blair. And behind that lies a very interesting thing, is that her impact on Britain was so strong that it changed the Labour Party. And when the Labour Party came into power, it was no longer a socialist party. It accepted everything that Thatcher once did. And that was even exported to other countries. And I think that's, getting re-elected might not always be the most important thing. The most important thing is to make such a big difference in society that you can make change permanent even when you're no longer there. I talked too much, now you have to ask more questions. Or you don't have to, but...
If nobody, I would like to ask you, what are the main consequences of Swedish social model on new jobs creation in private sphere and on income of poorest people?
Yeah, two very relevant aspects. I think that since we do have the biggest problems in the labor market, the effects of the regulations and the taxes and also of the public monopolies in the welfare sector is very, very negative for job creation. I looked at EU 15 before enlargement. Look at EU 15 between 1995 and 2004. Employment developed better in 11 of those countries than in Sweden. We were number 4 from the end. And that, I think, is very telling, because when you put these welfare services in public monopolies, you don't have any employment growth there, because you could have had if private companies were allowed to provide welfare services, but you don't. And that's the sector where we actually should have the new services jobs after manufacturing, which I'm talking about. But we don't have that because it's put in public monopolies and inefficiently run, and where tax money is not enough. Regulations for smaller businesses mean that people don't start smaller businesses as much as we do. We're at the very bottom in the European Union. And the regulations in the labor market mean that the businesses we have, they're very, very reluctant to hire somebody. Because, you know, if you hire somebody and you make a mistake, and you can't fire that person ever without getting the world's most powerful trade union movement all over you, then you will think twice before you hire somebody. And high taxes, very, very high taxes on work, mean that it's expensive to hire. All these things have led to a situation where employment is developing very poorly, especially for young people and especially for immigrants. So we have big social problems for that. And for poor people, we have had an increase in poverty actually in Sweden. From 1990 to now, we have a bigger share of the population which is poor. At the same time, average poverty in the European Union has been decreasing. So we have a higher share of poverty in Sweden than the average in the European Union. And if you look at the most reformist countries, reformist in the labour market like Ireland, they have a lower poverty rate than Sweden now. And I think all of this shows that it's not a social model that we're having and that we need more reform.
Maybe I would like to supplement you from the book Beyond the European Social Model, Anderson and O'Brien. They mentioned that over the last decade, 1995 to 2004, the income of the poorest 10% of the poorest population in Ireland have grown 8 times faster than in Sweden.
Yeah.
This is very significant difference between these two.
Well, are you that convinced?
Thank you. I have just 2 short questions. First, I want to go back to the development of the Swedish social state and market state. You mentioned that there was the very strong radical shift from the free market to the social democracy and to the welfare state. I'd like to ask you about the background of this shift. What were the driving forces of this shift? And my second question is about immigration. I recently read one article in Economist 2 weeks ago about the serious immigration problems around Stockholm in Sweden. I would like to ask you about the impacts of the welfare state immigration. What are the main causes of this problem in Sweden? Thank you.
Well, your first question about the driving forces behind the growth of government in Sweden, I mentioned that briefly, and I think we have had the public choice school explains a lot. Lots of special interests got power, and they demanded lots of things, and the government gave it to them, and that state is growing. The second thing is that, well, the belief in the central planned economy was really strong. They thought that the state could provide welfare services, social security better than private companies. And then therefore they put all these things in the state. Now we know that was wrong, but we still have that system. There might be also other explanations in my country, such as a weak constitution, a constitution of the country which does not protect the minorities and does not put up any barriers for what the majority is actually allowed to do. So the majority finds it very easy to increase the size of the state at the expense of the individual. I think also there are historical reasons. In Sweden, you had the farmers and the noblemen and the king. And in order to get around the oppression from the noblemen, the farmers were allowed to go directly to the king with their various issues. And that created a mentality that the state, i.e. the king, is our savior from oppression from the noblemen. So I think among the Swedish farmer population, which was 80% of the population once, the mentality was that if we want to escape the nobleman oppression, we have to go to the state, the king. And I think when the welfare society was about to be built, it was very easy to again run to the state and say, hey, solve this for us. And also the fact, last, that Sweden is not a federation. Sweden is a very centralized state, and it has been a very homogeneous state in terms of one school, one military service, one TV channel. This is not anymore, but it was when that society was built, and one people. Everyone was born in Sweden. Now we don't have that. We have hundreds of TV channels, people are traveling abroad, studying abroad, we have lots and lots of immigrants, etc. It's a very heterogeneous society. So the legitimacy of a collective decision-making of a very large share of society is much smaller today. A long answer to a very interesting question. And last about immigration, yes, we have lots of problems because of the fact that immigrants that came to Sweden from non-European countries did not have a chance of getting a job because of the social model, because of the regulations in the labor market. So we have quite a lot of immigrants living in suburbs without jobs year after year, quite poor. That's one reason why poverty has increased, and being quite desperate, and there's lots of crime. And I think a key challenge to solve that is we have to liberalize and deregulate to get these people into jobs and get integrated.
What I found surprising is that the public voice says that the Swedish social model is still good, or the media is transferring such a message that the public is satisfied with it. Maybe that's why the last change in the government was very tight. What do you think? Because you showed us some indicators and some reasons why the situation in Sweden is going down, is worsening. What would be these changes? How much radical and bad they should be that people would see that there is something wrong with it?
Well, finally the Swedish people saw that there were some problems in the Swedish society, so we had a new government which wants to do more free market reforms. It came into power here in October, and it has presented its first budget with income tax cuts and deregulations for small businesses, lower unemployment benefits, etc. So and I think we had a shift of power in Sweden because there were problems in society that the voters realized. The Social Democrats pretended there were no problems at all, and everything was perfect. It was the country of heaven, which it was not, because we had severe problems in the labor market, and the voters voted away the Social Democrats that had been there forever, and embraced a new government that said we need change. And now Sweden is getting change in the areas that need the most reform. And I think why has it been communicated previously that the Swedish social model is working fine? Well, I think the last government wanted to do that. They've been traveling the world, actually, all the ministers for a decade, saying that this is a fantastic model, do like we do. So it's been a propaganda stunt from their part. And I think it's not a kind thing to do to other countries to have them copy what creates problem at home. But they have done it, and that's one reason. And the other reason is that I know that politicians in various countries see problems, but they want easy ways out. The Swedish model seems to be an easy way out. You can have success without doing reforms. You can have success and have high taxes. But Sweden is showing the opposite. Sweden is only successful where we have left the welfare state behind. Sweden has great problems where we still have the social state, such as the labor market. And one reason why I'm so happy to come to you and come to many other countries to speak about the Nordic model and the European model is to tell, bring about the facts that say how it really is, and tell the truth about this and what you should learn and what you should avoid. And I think if you look at, somebody mentioned the Economist, I think, if you look at the Economist study of Sweden, I think that's a very good and balanced picture, and I think it's improving the international picture of the Nordic model. So I think that soon many people will see that what you can learn from there is do free market reforms. I think it's changing.
Mr. Munkhammar, the politicians in the past, in the last 50 years, they tried to make us, or they wanted to make us richer. They wanted to have less unemployment, and they failed. I think that is quite clear to see. Today, I think that there is a new big interest from politicians. It's a so-called knowledge economy. Will the politicians, they say they will make us more clever. Will they succeed or will they fail? What do you think?
Well, will the politicians be able to make us more clever? It's a very clever question. I think that's also a way of having an easy way out. They think that, okay. We have problems because of our taxes and regulations and everything, but perhaps we can, have more government money into research and development, or in state universities, or, retraining or whatever, and then some people can get so clever that they can work and be very skillful, and then, pull us all ahead. I think that's their general idea. I don't think that will succeed. I think it's, of course, it's true that if you have more knowledge in your production, then you will get higher payment for what you're producing. If you have a high productivity, you get high wages, and that's very positive. But that's not something that politicians can decide. It's not something they can run. It's something that happens because companies want to develop. They invest in skills and research and development. It's not a political project. I think if the state is trying to do it, it will end up like the social model. They said, now the state is trying to do the social, and we get the anti-social. If the state is trying to do all the knowledge, we will probably get more stupid. So I think, again, it's about letting the free market run, and we will probably have a development in terms of higher productivity and so forth. But we also have to remember that perhaps every single person isn't a person that will have a very high productivity. And we have to allow that person to work as well. So if you cannot be a mathematical genius, it's perfectly all right if you work in McDonald's. I mean, I'm not against that. Every job is great and every job is important. And in Sweden, we try to, or they try to have high minimum wages just not to allow that kind of work. And I think we have to allow that kind of work as well. So the state should not be in the way, and that's the most important part of it.
Politicians have a great impact in Sweden from the last century, from 30s to 90s, for 60 years with very small interruptions there in power social democrats, but just for this audience, maybe I'm not going to tell you exactly because I have not a very close picture. Social Democrats had some 46-48%, maybe 45%, and the majority they used to achieve with Communist Party, 46 Social Democrats and 6 Communists. But this couple, this special marriage in Sweden, was supported by very strong trade unions, and trade unions were one body with Social Democrats and Communists. It was one institution with 3 legs. And this was for 60 years. And then in 1991, the right coalition won elections for 3 years. I think your election period is 3 years only.
It's 4 now.
It's 4 now. It is much better because Garvin had only 3 in 91. So it was too short to, he implemented those right-oriented reforms. The right-oriented coalition is led by conservatives, Moderaterna Party. And there are Christian Democrats, liberals, and center party. It's a middle party, but it's agrar and rural and green and something like that. So this coalition of 4 parties now is in power. So this is the political picture in Sweden for the last century. So this is important to know and to realize, because you discussed. You told us that there were many people who believed in central planning, so there are always in the power for tens of years.
Definitely, thank you for that. It's all correct. Just briefly, we have a majority government now in Sweden for the first time in 25 years. So, of course, it might be quite a strong government. The Social Democrats have only been in majority once, I think. It's between 1968 and 1971. They have always been in minority, supported by the Communists. But during the last 12 years, the Communists were not enough because the Social Democrats were too small. So they had to take in the Greens as well. So they were supported by 2 parties. It was a parliamentary mess always. But in the end, it's very important to add also that the state, the Social Democrats, and the trade unions have been one power center, which has created, I think, a democratic deficit in Sweden because they've used taxpayer money for propaganda and stuff. And I think it has. That's one reason why a shift of government in the last election was very important. But you also have to remember, when looking at social democratic parties in any country, Sweden, Britain, here as well, perhaps I don't know about your parties. They change. Their ideology has changed throughout the decades. And the Swedish Social Democrats in the 1930s, they thought that 15% in tax pressure was too high. They said that we want lower taxes for ordinary people, 15% of tax pressure. And then they went in the 1950s. They went radical. They wanted centrally planned economy, and that's when the disaster happened. And then in 1968 they continued in that direction. But then again in the 1980s, 90s, they did not turn into New Labour, but they improved a bit. So I think if you look at the European social democratic spectrum, New Labour here and the French social democrats here, I think the Swedish ones are somewhere in the middle. They don't want radical reform, but they don't want something else either. They just want everything to be as it has always been.
Thank you. I think it's not very fair to say that the state doesn't have any role. And So the question is that it's the amount of state involvement, but I think that most important role of the state is to build a good regulatory framework for good policies to be implemented. And one of the very important role of the state is the investment in education and in R&D. Also, you can look at the United States, the country which is the richest in the world, and if you look at the numbers, how much the US invests in the education and research, these are the biggest numbers with Japan and Finland and so on. So to say, it's being very simple to say that the state doesn't have a role in building also the so-called knowledge economy, which is here, even if we want it or not, the knowledge economy is being here regardless of what we think about it. So I know that there is a high investment also from the private sources in the US, and I think this is the biggest background in Europe that we are not able so much to couple the private sources in the education with the public resources. But I think, and there is evidence that the highest rates of returns in the investments are in the education and in the training. So I wouldn't really underestimate this question. Of course, the question is how to invest in order to have the high rate of returns. That I agree, but I wouldn't be too superficial about the state involvement in education and so on, especially primary and secondary education, where the social impacts of the education are high, in contrary with the tertiary education, where it is quite well known already that the returns are quite individualized. So therefore, also the investment should be appropriate to the benefits of the education. So it's just a remark.
Well, thank you very much for that. I was probably too simple in a short time. I think I agree about most of what you're saying. First of all, I'm not an anarchist, so I think the state has a role. It's very important that we have a state in general, that the state is doing police, defense, basic education and so on. But my main point is that the size of the state today is way too big, partly because it destroys the economy, partly because many things the state is doing is crowding out the basic things. We don't have enough police in Sweden because we're paying so much money for people and it's not working. So then my main point is that the state should focus on the things that the state should really be doing, the main things. And that's no reasons why social protection, social insurance should be something that is mandatory from the state. It's something that most people could actually be buying private insurance for themselves. It's assumed that you should buy private insurance to protect yourself if your house turns on fire, but politicians don't expect you to understand that one day you will get old and you should have bought private pension insurance, and I think people would understand that too. So my point is that there are many things the state is doing which is totally unnecessary and would have been done much better in the private sector by people by themselves. And that's also in the research and development and the education part. I'm not saying, since today much of the education and research and development is done by the state. I say that, of course, as long as the state is doing that, it should do it in the best way. So the most important thing is that we have that is done in the private sector to a large extent, because that's what's driving the development. And I think we should have much more private universities, for instance, privately funded universities, and because I think state research and state funding for research might be one part, but that's the big part. The most important thing is that you should not make achieving the knowledge society a state political goal, because when the state is doing that, the state is trying to find an ultimate aim of everything. The state will be thinking that it should be the one that's doing all the research and all the development and all the education, and that's what should be avoided. Instead, I think the state has one part, but it's very important to realize that most of it should happen out in private society concerning these things. If that's a more clarifying about my view.
I just want to say that I completely understand this. But of course, let's say the applied research is definitely part of the private sector activity. On the other hand, the basic research is there is a high cost, and and you usually need some stimulus from the state in the drug-based research. That's what I mean. That there are also market failures that you have to take into account, and I think that this is the question of the good investment. You really have to be careful in not to go too far with the state investment, but then to create a good market environment to stimulate the investment. So let's say the property rights are secured and so on and so on. This is the role of the state, right? Otherwise, there is no reason to do any research if anyone can steal any of your ideas, as for example in China.
No, property rights are very important.
But that's a question of the state.
It's a basic right.
Yeah, and the Nordic economies of the notion, which is everywhere, also in the US. So, I mean, not just to be too dogmatic about the terms. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. I have a speculative question. We know that, for example, insurance company can offer services like welfare state and for a lower cost. We know that, for example, in history, courts and judges could be independent from the state, and for example, also police, or there was a money system independent, so a private money system, for example, in Scottish banks. And so my question is, do we really need a government?
Well, my reply to that was a bit in the last reply to the last question. I think in regard to the things you mentioned, I think we need a state. I'm not an anarchist, and I think it's very important that we have a state that upholds basic rights and protects people from each other, and also provides for police and defense. And I would find it very hard to prioritize defense and things like that. So I think it's very important to have a state, but there are many things. Perhaps the majority of the things is to look at public expenditure that the European states are doing now that could be done better in the private voluntary sector. And I don't think the most important thing is to decide exactly should we have a 10 or 15 or 17% tax pressure. The most important thing is to say that these things should not be done by the state, and the direction about reducing the state is very important. And if we end it's very far ahead. But it's an interesting question on principle, but in the real world we have to first decide about the direction, and then we will see where we end up.
Yeah, really, this is a very interesting question from a theoretical point of view. But this is, in practice, this question of transaction cost. And in this case, this difference is more demand as public goods than price. So, but nevertheless, on the other side, it's clear that the government, such government about 10% of GDP, it should be maybe the most effective or sufficient for us. But currently, we have a government with 50-60% of GDP. I may give you one chart. Here it's absolutely clear. Maybe look at size of government from 19th century, from 10% of GDP, or in Sweden only 6% of GDP, increased to end of 20th century to 60% of GDP, 70% of GDP, in Sweden 70% of GDP, and this is a huge increase, and this is core problem. Not 0, 5, 6% of GDP as government, but government with huge competencies at least 50% of GDP. I would like to mention, or I would like to ask you, our guest, for example, would you give us more information about on this gold period in Sweden because I know that Sweden was one of the most free and richest country in the world, and therefore this is the main source of wealth in Sweden currently. And I would like to ask you, maybe give us more information.
Well, I think that that growth of the size of the state as a share of society funded by taxes is, I mean, what you see in that picture, and I have it in my book as well, is the growth of the European social model. And the interesting thing is that it happened in most Western European countries, not only one or two, but in most. And it even happened in the United States, but not as much. And it happened in countries not only with social democrats, but also with countries where parties like Christian Democrats, etc., and conservatives, so-called conservatives, were running the government. So it was quite unanimous between the different countries, and it was unanimous between the parties. And as I say, it was during a few decades where all parties, of different degree of course, but all parties were to some extent impressed by the centrally planned economy. They thought that the state was the best provider of many things. And also the fact that since the economy was going so well, because it was, low taxes, etc., it was going so well, you could afford to raise the taxes to pay for your election promises, election after election. But then, suddenly, you had raised taxes so much that it destroyed the economic growth, and you could not promise anymore. And then you got into the crisis, and you couldn't even, you saw the centrally planned economy of the Soviet Union, etc., fell apart, and you knew that this system was based on the false assumptions, and it doesn't work anymore. We cannot tax people anymore to pay for our election promises. So it hit the wall sometime 1980, 1990. And then, after that period, it has not increased anymore. It's been roughly the same. And, the governments are standing in the middle of all these problems created by that very increase in the size of the state. And they're looking for a direction. How should we reform and get out of this and get re-elected? And that's what's happened. But I think that it's a very good image to explain what happened. And you have to realize that it wasn't many countries, and most parties are to blame for what happened. And that's why also not one single party can suddenly come up and say, hey, we opposed all of this all the time, and we are the ones to take us out of it, because all of them were into it to some extent.
Maybe just one question from the social chronicle, maybe. Can you tell us something about these three ministers who had to resign recently from the new government? And how do you see this case?
Well, two ministers, I think.
Oh, two. Yes.
Anyway. Well, I think that this is the first non-social democrat government we've had in 12 years, which means that 23 ministers had to be appointed in 1 week's time, or 10 days or something, and none of them had been in government before, or two had been, because Carl Bildt is back as the foreign minister. But that means that there's always a risk when you have to appoint 22 new people, that when the media gets to look at all of these, and they look at their incomes, and they look at their houses, and look at all of their personal history, they will find something. And they found some minor things, in my view, in the private economy of two of these ministers, and it was regarded as a big scandal, and instead of being there and scandalizing the government, they resigned. I think it's good that the media are looking at ministers and, closely. I think we should have parliamentary questioning, which we don't have in Sweden. So we should really look at what are these people. And I'm not surprised that 2 of the 24 had to resign because they found things. And I'm not surprised that when you're pointing to 22 new ones, that some have that. And I think, well, we hope that 2 new ones will make the first scrutinization.
I would like to thank our guests for excellent, interesting, and I believe so that also useful lecture for us. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank to you for discussion. And now the small refreshments is available to you. Thank you very much.